Okay, so it's showtime. Welcome to
Okay.
Billy Coaching Live. For those who are joining, this is a live I organize weekly with leaders to address leadership topics and to engage a discussion with you. So it's really such a pleasure to be again together today. So welcome to all of you. Don't hesitate to share your question, your comments. I will integrate that as part of the discussion so you can really engage with us. So, welcome to those on YouTube, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. So, I am Christine Billy. I am a professional coach and trainer focusing on influencing in leadership. And I have the pleasure today to welcome Jeff Smith. And I will introduce Jeff. Welcome, Jeff. So happy
Thank
to
you.
have you here with us.
Appreciate the
Um,
opportunity.
Yes, with pleasure. So, today we will talk about how to influence change without control, and Jeff is joining us for this so important topic of influence and control and how the two connects. And he's joining with this, expertise as an executive coach, C-suite business leader. Is leading the Supporting Lines Institute, focusing on helping companies to achieve tremendous growth by helping leaders to see supporting lines, not reporting lines. So this is a pretty different approach to it, and so we are eager to know more about that and the difference it makes. We can already envision the difference it can make for sure. And I want to emphasize that I had the pleasure to meet Jeff because we are both part of ACEC, the Association of Corporate Executive Coaches. So this is always the time when I say hello to CV, the founder of ACEC, and all the ACEC members, because I have the great pleasure and honor to be the ambassador for the association. And so that's also part of what we do. So this is an opportunity for all of you online to get to know the association as well. Okay, so that said, I would like to start the discussion with Jeff. My usual question to start the discussion is we are always interested by stories. So, how did you become a coach and to do or to focus on what you are focusing at the moment?
Yeah, I mean it's funny. There's kind of two answers to that. One is I have no idea, and the other one is I know exactly how it happened. And I mean ACEC has definitely been part of my journey as well. So I appreciate the work that you're doing for them. Um, yeah, I mean it really goes back to I think I spent I don't know 20 years being what I thought was a great leader, and then I had this like epiphany around I don't know probably about 5 years ago now where I was like, I actually don't think I was a great leader. I think I was a really good manager with some leadership potential. But I think I was so focused on helping teams get things done and not as much on the human experience of work, like really genuinely showing that you cared about it. And so I think my journey, I spent time in the software industry. I spent time in the helicopter industry. I've been in finance roles. I've been in operations roles. As the head of sales for $1 billion company. And while we look at these things a lot of times as being a very different sort of set of roles, to me, it was just a sort of a journey of putting myself in positions where I really didn't know half of the job kind of thing. So I knew I could do it. And obviously the people that hired me believed I could too. But I was very transparent about the fact that this was an opportunity to learn and grow. And so I think, when I reflect on my career and I look back and, people will ask me, coach, it could be coaching clients, could be friends, could be sometimes now it's friends, their kids as they're starting their career. I really look back on what were these sort of things that weave together to get to coaching. And I think that, one of the things ACEC is focused on is their master coaches are people that have had business experience. And I think that's really the big thing. So going through roles in, all these different disciplines and having C-suite roles in different industries, I think it really helps you get perspective on a broader sense of things. So then when you actually become a coach, all of that business acumen you can use. But I think most importantly, it helps you really have empathy and kind of get in step with your client, because like I've literally been in that chair in some of these situations that they're struggling with. And so, you know, my the big moment for me where I shifted from sort of more classic management roles and that sort of thing into what I would say is true leadership roles, when I was at one company, and it was a very challenging situation. And I think sometimes working in a challenging situation for a challenging leader helps you understand things very quickly about what leadership is and what it isn't. And so when I went into Mobify, I had a very different perspective. I went in there thinking about, how can we maintain the amazing culture they built while making it more performant? Whereas in the past, I've been focused purely on performance. And so I definitely, I cared about people on my team, and I think I would show that, but not to the extent I did there. And then that has really sort of become what the work of supporting lines is. Like we spent a lot of time there helping new people leaders in particular become more effective with their teams. And that became so rewarding that led to me to become a coach and to get certified, to keep doing that work internally. And then it became kind of a side hustle. Like it was all visible, but it was a side hustle. I was coaching at other companies and stuff as well. And eventually the CEO came to me and he was like, you need to go do this. Like it was very clear that the side hustle was becoming the hustle. And I think, the shortest answer to this would be when I think about people saying that they find their purpose, like I'm not sure that's always how it happens. Like I think in this case, I wasn't looking for this. Right. So I think in this case, my purpose found me. And at that point, there was no going back. It's like, it was game over. Like once your purpose finds you, it's like you have to do it. And it sounds kind of like, whimsical to say it that way, but that's what happened. It's like, it was very clear that this was the work. And it was very clear that we had something that helped leaders be more effective super quickly. And it showed that we needed to look at everybody as a leader and start more of the kind of people manager development much earlier. And so once I had that kind of epiphany and saw that we could actually do that work, it became very clear that coaching was my path.
Wow, super. Thank you so much. It feels to me when you share, listening to you, that there was this focus on performance, and it became more clear for you that there was also this aspect of, connecting with people with empathy and seeing things slightly from a slightly different perspective, right? So, and let me know if you agree with that. As coaches, we focus on the so-called process, right?
Yes.
How things interact together, how things connect or not connect together. So putting the pieces of the puzzle together so that you can easily reach performance. So the focus is not on trying to achieve, but it's about being there together and connect to achieve. So
Yes.
yeah.
I mean, it really, there's been so many epiphanies that I've had over the past, I don't know, 5 years. Like it was probably 2016 when this work really started. By 2017, it was really rolling. And one of the biggest things that I always share with people is that when I was, in the pandemic, I'd have people say like, we really need to attend to the human experience of work, but we got so many things we need to achieve. And our data says that those aren't two things. Like if you think about a time in your career, and hopefully it's now, and I'll get everybody that's listening to do this too. Think about the time in your career, like that moment where you were performing at your best, like things are flying. I am willing to bet that you had two things. You were achieving critical goals, meaningful goals, like you were doing the work you wanted to do, and you were having a great experience of doing it. Like they're not people's peak level of performance. Like we're doing work now where we're looking at this in we do organizational work. We're also now doing some prototyping around sports. And in sports, you see the same thing. It's like when we ask people to go back and reflect on when they had their worst performance and when they had their best performance,
Yes.
almost invariably, their best performance is when they were having a great experience.
Exactly.
And if you take the best athlete or the best leader or the best salesperson or the best accountant or whatever, and you put them in a situation that's awful, they're not going to perform at the same level. And so this whole notion of like, well, do I focus on achieving goals and driving revenue, or do I focus on the human experience work? The answer is yes. They're the same thing.
Yeah.
They're the same thing.
Super. Okay. So you shared with us the connection between the two. Okay. So enjoying the moment and performing. And we came, preparing this discussion with this title of How to Influence Change Without Control. So I'm curious. So when you are sharing this connection between performance and enjoying the moment, um, where is influence in this? I mean, how do you get to this stage where you feel connected and you are in the flow, you enjoy the moment? So, what is the link in your mind when we talk about influencing? Means how do we get there?
Yeah, like so again, I like doing exercises, right? So if you think about times in your career where you, and again, I'd like everyone to do this. Like, think about times in your career where you worked with people that were able to exert influence, like in a healthy way. We talk about influence and power and control as like negative things. They're not. We all want to have influence. We all would like to have power, whatever that is, right? But it's like this is from a positive standpoint. I'm not talking about like, there's lots of examples of evil power in the world today as well. But like in the context of positive power, positive influence, think of people as you reflect over the years, whether it's your clients or people you worked with, that have been able to like really influence things that they didn't, none of it reported to them. They were just able to have a huge impact. And I'm willing to bet that those people are also people that you really enjoyed working with. They're people that created a better culture. They help people online. They help people collaborate. They held people accountable. They help people grow. They look for opportunities for other people. Of course, they were looking for things for themselves as well. But these are people that were able to help the organization move forward without reporting lines. It's all about supporting lines, right? So we talk about supporting lines, and I'm sorry if this sounds pitchy, but it's like this is like one of our concepts, right? But like people often think about control. Like I need to have control of something to be able to help it transform, move, whatever. Control is not a thing. It's a mirage. Like even the CEO doesn't have control. And if you want proof of that, look at this, all the people leaving organizations right now. If the CEO had absolute control, they could just say, you have to stay at this company, right? They can't.
Yeah.
Nobody has control. People definitely have different degrees of positional influence, but I think I've read about these kind of topics before, and there's the theory put out that I really like is that positional reporting line power is actually the weakest form, and you see in organizations that any large goal, any critical organizational goal, like by almost invariably is going to be something that is cross-functional. So right out of the gate, unless you're in the C-suite, a whole bunch of people need to work together without having reporting lines. So a
Yeah.
supporting line is a commitment to action between two people
Mhm.
in support of an organizational goal. That's what it is. So we need to make sure those commitments are visible, that they're understood, and they're agreed. But then we need accountability. So if I make a commitment to you and I don't follow through, or I seem like I'm off track in a high performance organization, you don't need to go to the C-suite executives. You come to me. You're like, hey, dude, you said you're going to do the thing and you're not doing the thing. Can we talk about that?
Mhm.
So in a high performance culture, accountability is something at scale. Accountability is a huge way to influence people. If, big if, you've got them to commit to the action in the first place. So the people that are able to create influence create these networks. They create these teams across the organization where they're able to inspire people to work together, usually
Mhm.
in support of a meaningful goal. And so if
Yeah.
we've got something we're working toward, that is the way to kind of command some influence. And I remember back, you know, a really good example of this was, I got a story from when I was at CHC Helicopters. I remember one day I was sitting there and I wasn't having a good week, and I was really frustrated, and I caught myself sitting back and saying, you know, our culture could be better. And someday I wish I worked at a place like Crystal Decisions again, which is a place I'd worked before, and the culture there was incredible. And I caught myself and I'm like, what? Like, did you really just say that? Like, I think I actually even said it out loud. Like, I wish I could work at a place like Crystal again. I was a vice president in a company. I was like, what the hell are you thinking? Like, do you really believe you have no ability to create a better culture here? And so when you look at influence, a lot of times people look at it like, oh, I can't influence the whole company. And that may be true. So then I like getting people in my coaching to scale it back. Okay, so what can you influence? And in my case, we were running a book of, $1 billion worth of business. I had 50 people that were either directly reporting to me or in my organization, another 25 people that were, sort of functional experts, subject matter experts that supported all of our bids and all of our sales and efforts. And so the decision I made was to get that group to become much more effective. And the moment I shifted that mindset really kicked off a chain of events where everyone started to work together towards common goals. And one of the most glaring examples of this in a really positive way is that, we struggled. It was very complex work to go set up a helicopter operation,
Yeah.
in remote nations for oil and gas work. I mean, it's super complex. And we struggled to be there like on time, on budget, on scope, right? So you could scramble to get there on time, but that usually costs you a whole bunch of money. So one of the things we did was we put together this group of 75 people, and we made sure that they saw they were a cross-functional team. None of them reported to me, but the 50 did, but the 25 didn't. And in many ways, the 25 were as important or more important to our successful deployments. But by getting that group together, getting focused on the shared goal, and also we started to survey everybody about what is their level of satisfaction with the support they're getting from everybody else, it was a game changer. And so we got to the point where 97%, 97% of the time, we were on time, on scope, on budget. Saved us like 25 million US on a recurring basis. But the key thing was the level of customer satisfaction between all the internal departments went from 35% to 85%. And so they went in tandem. And we see that in our engagement research. Like the things that drive engagement, which are critical to influence, the things that drive engagement are performing while having a great experience. It's straight line predictive of engagement. Like engagement is the end metric. And so when you think about influence, things that you could do to get someone engaged in whatever you're trying to accomplish with a shared vision, shared purpose, and then you show that you actually care about their experience as well, like that's the magic. You don't need control at that point. You're going to have something more important, which is influence, and again, this positive power.
Yeah, so nice. Great story. So really looking for great experience, because then, I mean, when you have, as you said, when you have a group of people sharing a vision, believing in the vision, wanting to achieve the vision, they connect, and they want to make it happen. It's not like a pressure. It's enjoying moving forward together.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's
That's it.
really you are there. You know why you are there. You don't know exactly when you are working. You don't know exactly how you'll get there. But that's really the funny part, right? Because you don't want to know exactly the road. You want to discover
Right.
yourself and the work together. That's a pleasure.
Exactly.
Pleasure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I think, when you think about control,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of it's interesting. This has been coming up a lot in my coaching where people are like, oh, I wish I could change this process or change the way our company does this, or it could be something around like product or design. It could be something around just like, performance management, the way those processes are run. And I hold people accountable and capable of being able to have the influence. And so I've literally had people go to the CEO, present their case, and it's been successful. And there are people that like, director level, and they're able to engage with the CEO or someone else more senior to try to influence change. And when you think about it, like I do think it starts with this vision. But if you have control or think you have control, then that might give people the illusion that they can share a vision and then everybody's going to go do it. But it's not sharing a vision, it's you have a shared vision. That's what creates influence. Like people need to be bought into it. Otherwise, like you can't tell someone, hey, Christine, this is what we're trying to do and it's meaningful to you. Like it doesn't work like that. You have to decide what's meaningful for you, not me. And the minute someone thinks that the work that you're trying to do is meaningful and worth pursuing, you've started to create some influence.
Yeah.
Again, in a positive sense, right?
So, listening to you, it just came to my mind also this, in a previous discussion, we talk about, from another perspective on leadership, we talk about potential and insecurities, okay? So we all have potential and we all have insecurities to a certain extent. So just came to my mind that, making the connections between the two discussions, that you really fully reveal your potential and the potential of the teams and the organization when you are moving away from your insecurities, right? Together, right? So connecting together. So that's, it is to me the link also you make with control, because we try to control when we feel not secure. We try to bring more safety by
Yes.
controlling. So, and change is by definition really focusing on the potential, right? So we change all the time. So we have the potential to change. And that's, recognizing that potential help us to naturally change. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. So, um, I am actually curious on the moment, if you would be willing to share story with us where you were not able to influence change, and what did you learn about that? Because most of us, we face from time to time this type of issues. um
I mean, yeah, I mean, I've got so many of those. I'll go to one of the most painful ones for me. We'll just go there.
Go for it.
So
Yeah.
in one instance, and I had a couple like this. I've had cases where you're working with a manager, and there are some things that a manager can control, but they don't have ultimate control, right? But you do have cases where I've worked for managers, and it's been like when I was a manager and the person's a director, and it's been when I was, a VP and someone else was a C-suite executive. I've had a number of times where the changes that I was trying to put in place, the things that I was trying to do, were stifled. And it was incredibly frustrating. And so again, it comes back to this, I don't actually think, even with all like my, coaching superpowers and probably the wisdom I've gained by seeing so many people in so many different situations now through my coaching as well, because we learn from our clients. I don't have anything I could bring back to those moments and be able to necessarily change the outcome. And so I can think of one where, yeah, I just had a manager that I think this is earlier in my career. I think that in some ways he was insecure in his role. And it was something where the constant struggle for our team was that he was really struggling. And so that created downstream impact for us. And so trying to influence change when you had a manager that wasn't really strong, super difficult. I tried everything, and ultimately the solution was I changed teams.
Mm-hmm.
And later in my career, I had a situation where it was probably the most rewarding work I was doing. I was working, everything was flying, things are great, and then something else in another part of the business shifted, and the CEO's behavior changed completely. And all of a sudden, it seemed like I kind of became the person that was somehow, you know, not necessarily at fault for what happened, but clearly it was being taken out on me and my team, and it was a really challenging experience. And so, yeah, I think it was very clear in that one too. Like, I gave feedback, I tried to do things to show how my experience was just not, it was not pleasant. And ultimately, again, sometimes retreat is the best form of influence. Like, I think it was only when I resigned from the company that the person started listening to me. And then it was too late. Like, I was resolute in, like, you can't treat people like that and expect them to be able to perform. Um, and so, yeah, I think the reason I left that one, I remember talking at the time to my wife, and I was saying I have to leave, and she was like, "Well, what are you, is there anything else you can do?" And I'm like, "No, I've literally tried everything. I think I'm stuck." And if you get to that point, I think at that point you need to take yourself and bring your ability to influence positive change elsewhere, which is what I did.
Yeah.
And so I had no plan B. And so my wife said, like, "You're just going to leave." I'm like, "Yep." And she's like, "What's going to happen?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I can't stay here. Like, what I feel happening to myself, I'm not liking it." So, I think that when people think about control, you do have control over your decisions and your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, I learned a lot from those leaders over the years that weren't, I almost learned more from leaders I had. And I got out of those situations as fast as I could. But I almost learned more in those compressed times of
Mm-hmm.
bad leadership. There's really no other term for it.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible experience. Than I did from the amazing leaders I've been able to work with, because there's been several of those as well. And I feel very blessed. Most of my leaders that I've worked with have been awesome. Some of it's by choice, and some of it I fell into it. But the key thing for me is that you do have the ability to control your decisions and your actions,
Mm-hmm.
but your ability to influence is a gift. And so I chose to take that. When I went to Mobify, that was actually how I went into the company. I went into the company up to that point, I think I was focused on how can I go in somewhere and like start a company and make a whole bunch of money. And then this one was more about this company needs someone to come in. And yeah, my title is CFO, but I'd also just, gone through what I call the healthiest midlife crisis, which this other experience was a part of. And it just helped me really reset and go like, what is this all about? And yeah, I just went into Mobilify with a totally different sense of purpose and about my purpose, what my work was. Sure, CFO was part of it, and I did that task, but there was a big difference in my view on how I could influence the culture and influence other people's experience. And so John Kabat-Zinn has this quote where he always talks about the difference between human doings and human beings. And so I've kind of riffed on that. And I think that management is about supervising humans doing, but leadership is about inspiring human beings. Yeah. And some of that is achievement. Like, I'm not saying leadership, you need to make sure that people are getting things done and moving forward. Mm-hmm. But I think that difference is the difference between management and leadership. And I would say Mobilify was the canvas on which I really became, a much better leader. And yeah, just your ability to influence, once you start leading instead of managing, it explodes. And it doesn't matter what level you're at, because when you look at, like, I've gone and looked at like entry-level job postings. So like junior deputy assistant sales clerk, or like just like literally the most entry-level titles you can think of. Every one of those postings, they say, we want someone to come in, live our values, be a great colleague, be a self-starter, be a great communicator. Like, what is leadership if it isn't those things? So we're literally hiring people at the beginning of their career based on their ability to be a leader, an individual leader. And then there's a huge gap between that moment and when they lead a team, which is when we start training them on how to actually lead a team. We need to start supporting people from the beginning. I think that was really the big thing we started doing at Mobilify. Was like when we train people on like one-on-ones or do like a workshop on how to use a coach approach, we train everybody, because everyone's a leader. And I think if the minute we start treating people like that in an organization, everybody starts to look at their ability to influence change, because we just told them you're a leader, and we're recognizing that. And I think that you can unlock tremendous power by just not looking at the C-suite and the VPs and the directors as the only people that can have influence. Everybody can have an impact. Everybody.
Yeah, wonderful. It was so rich, in terms of, insights. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really, a feeling that, as you said, it's really focusing on the being, okay? Mm-hmm. Your being, the being of people, which is at the core of influencing. Coming back to the early in the discussion, it is the same. It's not about the performance. It's about how you connect these emotional components, how you connect to your own insecurities and the insecurities of people. The more I also reflect on that, on my career, my experience also, I'm feeling more and more that these components you develop over life, right? So when you start your career, you tend to focus on proving yourself that you can deliver something, and focusing on the doing, and then gradually you realize that this is the consequences of your being. But it's like at least for me, it took some time to understand. And when I coach, I also sometimes struggle, right, with the coaching, and then I reflect, because it's discussion we have, and say, and it's always almost linked to insecurities somehow.
Right.
So
right.
That's the beauty of connecting with different people, and that you influence yourself and you influence others. You develop by reflecting on the different experiences.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Like, so another example that I've had recently. So last year, one of the coolest things happened in 2021 was we have a 360 that assesses high performance leadership. Mm-hmm. And I had a client that wanted to give everybody a 360. And so the question we had, myself and my client, we were like, okay, well, how many of these questions, of these 36 elements that we look at, how many of those apply to everybody? And so again, following our model, of course, the first thing I did is that when I showed our assessment to a whole bunch of frontline staff, our company, other clients, and I showed them, like, these are all the things we assess team leaders on. I would like you to identify all of the ones that you think you should be held accountable to as well, that you should be doing as a frontline staff member, as a team. And out of the 36, people came back with 30 of them. So just think about that for a second, right? About this everybody's a leader concept. 30 of the 36 things we expect a senior leader to do that manages the team, everybody thinks they should do it. And a great example of that recently was I had somebody that, so we did this team member 360 and someone got the results. And one of the areas that they were lower in was that they, do they give people recognition? Do they give the people feedback? And they were like, but I'm like, who am I? Like, why am I being expected to do this? Like, I don't have, that's something that leaders do. I'm like, right, it is, and you're a leader. And I said, let's try something. You think the organization should give more recognition? Yes, I do. So this is an example of influence. I said, okay, what if you, in your Slack channel, every month, you went out to the company Slack channel and you gave some recognition to some people that had done something really great for you that month, right? And we got a way that you do it. So it's like, be specific about what they did, talk about the impact, talk about how it made you feel, and then connect it back to the values of the organization and how it's an example of living them. And he started doing that. And now, on a monthly basis, there's a whole bunch of people in the company that are doing the exact same thing. Right? Recognition is a great example of how you can create influence in a positive sense. It's not about being manipulative. It's about authentically thanking someone in a form where they're comfortable, and then it has a chain reaction. And so this is a frontline person in a company, and now a whole bunch of people are giving recognition to other people the same way he did, just because he did that simple action. If we were able to measure, and this is something we need to talk about, but like, if you could measure the level of influence that person had before they did the recognition exercise, and now, for sure, that person's sort of stature in the organization would be higher because people were like, wow, cool, that person just influenced change.
And Jeff, we just before we started the live, we started to have some idea to work together, and around this influencing topic and how to measure that. And it just came to my mind that you are sharing about the power of recognition in leadership. So what we name praising, right? And I have recently reflected on the link between asking for permission and praising. And it seems that there is a link. So, for example, that people who tend to be pretty directive, let's say, in their leadership style, will tend also to praise less, okay, or to recognize less, or to thank less. Okay? So I've been really interested to explore for myself the link between the two, and sensing that when we are more on the side of asking for, asking questions like we do in coaching, asking for permission, on the side of respecting, okay, the differences or the different way to look at the world and and being curiosity, then naturally we are more on the side of recognizing that difference or that the impact coming from this diversity. So I just wanted to bring that here because it feels to me that you are also bringing the link between the two in the way you share it. So I find that really interesting. Yeah,
it's super common. Like, so in some ways, I almost feel like all roads. Like we could start from we did work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We did work on psychological safety. We looked at engagement. Right? We've done work recently on resilience because the world is testing our resilience. And it all leads back to the same thing. One of the core things we learned over the past couple of years is the importance of truly living values. So the number of times that I've gone through like our feedback exercise that we have, where we get people to really get clear on the feedback they're about to give, and we always bring in values. So what values of the organization is the person that you're going to give the feedback to, are they not living? And it's amazing how many times executives are like, yeah, our values are here somewhere. I just need to find them. I think they're in a drawer somewhere. Like, people don't even know what their values are. And that's like 90% of, if you went in at 90% of companies, if we went in and asked everybody, what are your values? We would not be able to find anybody that could name them all. And we definitely wouldn't find someone that would name them all and say they were all super important to them. However, there's an 80% connection between whether someone's a great leader and whether they live the values. 80%. What's really cool is we went back in one company and we took a sample of all of the people that had said that their leader was, like, their team leader excelled in at least one of the values of the organization. And then we went through this exercise called the Thought Exchange, which is one of our partners. And so we went through a thought exchange exercise where we asked people for some daily examples. Just give us some of the small daily things that people do when they excel at living the values. And then everybody rates everyone else's, like, their thoughts that they submit. And the things that came to the top were very profound, very consistent. And so the biggest one was that people felt respected.
Yeah.
The second one is that people said that the leader asked for their opinion. And the third is that they listened. Now, I guess it's fast backward, because a couple of years before that, we'd done some other research where we had looked at what are the things that create effective cross-functional teamwork, collaboration across the organization, like by the very definition of influence, because the people don't report to you. And guess what? The data came back and said, people feel respected was the number one thing.
Yeah.
Someone asked, the other teams ask for their opinion, and then listen to what they have to say. It's the same damn things. And so at the very root of this, if you think about living values, right? 80% connection between great leadership and living values. And the most important thing about that data point is it doesn't matter if the company even has defined values. People define it for themselves. So these sort of universal truths that are in most people's values, a lot of it is like, just be a good human, treat people properly. That's the core of it. And so if you just do that, you're seen as a great leader. And if you're a great leader in that sense, it has nothing to do with reporting lines and control. It will make you influential, because people will want to work with you because you care about their experience and you're likely to be doing purposeful work. And so by definition, just the core of just living values and treating people properly, that creates influence.
Here we go. We have the answer to the question, how to influence change without control. Focus on respect and caring about yourself and others. And then you can influence naturally. Yeah. Wonderful.
That's kind of it. I mean, we talk about a lot of the stuff that we do. People will say, like, wow, this stuff seems so simple. And it's like, well, it kind of is. It's common sense stuff. It's just not common practice, right? And it's a subtle difference. One of my clients recently said that a lot of our stuff is like, it's like a 10% change in direction, and then the magic happens. And so a good example is, like, I think most leaders actually care about their people, but they don't show it. It's just showing it. That's the key. So you can have values on the website, and you can have all of the care for people in the world, but if you don't show it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. So don't hesitate. Show that you care and that you respect yourself and others, and then the magic will happen. I totally agree with that. And I believe also with humility, we are all on our way to fully respect and accept ourselves and fully respect and accept others, right? So because we are faced from time to time with difficult interactions or things we believe is difficult. Okay, so this is our way. So then it means there is something to work on there, right? So
right.
And I think it's totally human. And again, if we accept it, then we can move forward. Wonderful.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful insight. I'm also looking at the time here. So we still have a few minutes to maybe to wrap up and summarize for those who are listening to this discussion. So I like to ask, as a summary, what are your key priorities for this year?
Oh, key priorities. I think I have enough priorities to keep 3 people busy. I think the biggest thing for us is, we're trying to balance 2 things. One is we're trying to expand our reach. So, it's growth of the business, but it's really more like Supporting Lines is all about helping millions of people have a better experience of work. So a lot of what we need to do is expand that reach. And what's been really exciting is to see that, we're able to have, with these common sense kind of approaches, we're able to have rapid transformation. And so I think what I want to do now is like really get some of those win stories out, like the fact that we helped an oil and gas company, literally transform their culture in about 6 months, right?
Oh,
It's fast. We've had leaders multiple times that have completely transformed themselves
hmm.
in the eyes of the people that work with them and for them in like 2 months. And so for us, it's about expanding that reach and really, really driving that out so more companies are taking advantage of that. So that's a big part. And then the other thing is really like continuing the research. I mean, that's the other, yeah,
Mm.
that it's really those two things I think that are the most important.
Wonderful. We absolutely want to know your recipe for changing, making this change real in a limited time, really. That's
Mm,
beyond what you all shared today. That would be wonderful to have further insight. And I know how, dedicated you are to really measure things. So really looking forward
yes.
to see that.
Yeah, we like things being data driven. And I think, if
Yes.
you work for a leader that isn't great, or you have people on your team that are really difficult to work with, if we gave them a 360, there's a 90% chance that there's a 90% relationship between someone getting low scores and not living values. So if I had 30 seconds to tell someone how they could influence their team, their leader, their organization, one of the biggest things you can do is give feedback in the context of values. Because the
Mm-hmm.
values on the website are essentially, they're a contract, like someone has agreed to live those.
Mm-hmm.
And so that alone,
Mm-hmm.
like the 30-second thing would be, go to the website, look at what value someone's not living, and hold them accountable to it in a way that's respectful, and just watch what happens.
Okay, so for those who are listening, keep that in mind. Absolutely, because this is about alignment. Okay,
Yes.
so being yourself, feeling aligned with the values, and we come back to this connection we were talking about before. Enjoying being there because it's easy, because it's effortless, right? You can be really yourself. Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. And last question for you, Jeff. To summarize this wonderful discussion, what key message would you like people to keep in mind?
I just think, I remember this, this is kind of a weird quote, but I really like it. So, you know, a lot of times people will wonder if they can have an influence. And so this I can't remember where it came from, but this is quote I read at one point that said, if you doubt your ability or doubt the ability of one person to have an impact, think of the last time you tried to go to sleep in a room that had a mosquito in
Mm,
it. Right? Like, so
mm,
I think people really underestimate the degree to which they can have an influence. And it doesn't need to be, across the entire world or whatever. But if you just focus on what you do influence, what that sphere is, and make that first positive change, it creates a massive ripple effect, like
yeah.
huge. And I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a ripple effect. And so I would encourage people to kind of go for it, because if you're in a situation where it isn't a good one, like I was talking earlier about some of those cases with me, you do ultimately have control of your decision to leave.
Mm,
And one of the things we get people to do is, before you do that, before you'd actually leave, go to someone that you think cares, hopefully there's somebody, and tell them that you'd like to have the exit interview that you're going to have in 3 months if things don't change. So I'd like to have my exit interview now.
mm,
I'm going to give you a chance to change the future. This is where we're going. 3 months from now, we're going to have a conversation where I tell you that for all these reasons, I'm leaving. But what I'd like to do is actually bring that forward to today, have it with you now, and give you a chance to change the future. And if the person doesn't, then you're right. You should leave, because they don't care.
mm, mm.
And so the future exit interview is one of the most powerful things you can do. And you got to take a bit of a risk to do it. But what's the downside? If you're going to leave anyway, then what's the risk really? Right?
Mm,
You're risking that the future could be different.
yeah.
So if you're working somewhere and you're in a difficult situation, but you would actually like to work there, you like the work, you like your team, that's a great way that you can happen to it. We have a tool called 3-story feedback. And if people go to cloud.supportinglines.com, they can download it for free.
Mm,
It's in our leader toolkit in the intro course. But that giving feedback that way is like, in the future, we're going to have this conversation if things don't change. Super powerful. and it's a great example of your ability to influence. Just
Yeah.
don't tolerate situations that you want to happen to. And obviously, if things are great, then
Yeah.
step forward and try to influence, right? But I think in many cases, people are stuck and they don't need to feel stuck.
Yeah. So it sounds like, you know, taking the lead and trying and testing what works. And
Yeah,
don't underestimate the power you have individually. But
100%.
the power you have individually aggregates, you know, collectively. And so that's how we are able to change things together. So that was really a pleasure to talk with you. And yeah, I look forward for other discussion and research work and other opportunities to share in the coming months. Okay, so let's
Awesome.
see what
Yeah.
we can organize.
Thanks for
Um,
having me.
yeah, so that was wonderful. So for those who are listening, don't hesitate to share your comments, your question regarding this discussion, or you know what you would like to see discussed in the coming weeks. As usual, I'm gonna you know teasing to say that you can join on my morning lives where I share my tips and experience on Tuesday morning at 8:30 a.m. And next Tuesday, I will have the pleasure to interview Anna Uni on emotional fatigue. So you also
Ooh.
want to join because we can further dig onto the link between emotion and influencing. And next Tuesday is gonna be really a special day for me. So I will interview Anna at 6 p.m. CET, and at 8 p.m. CET, I will have the pleasure to be interviewed by CB Bowman, the founder of MCEC. So I guess she will ask me question about my my story, my you know my thinking around influencing and leadership.
Awesome.
Okay, wonderful. So have all of you great end of the day wherever you are in the world. We say hello and talk soon. Thank you so much, Jeff. Bye bye. Talk
Thanks
soon.
again.